Well, Bertie Brosnan. By the way, Bertie, thanks a million. But that has to be one of the best names I've ever had on the podcast in nearly
Really?
300 names. Bertie Brosnan.
Um,
That's
yeah.
one. That's one. Like I'm buying whatever Bertie Brosnan is selling. Do you know that kind of way?
Well, I do have a Patreon there. You can sign on while I'm joking. No, maybe if you ever get an award kind of made up for best name or something, I gladly would take that in the post, you know?
Yeah, I can't. You went for you're Bartholomew originally,
Yeah, Bartholomew is my legal name. So it's actually a family tradition. So first son is called Bertie
right?
always. So I'm hoping to have a son someday. So he will be Bartholomew Brosnan. Bertie is the short for it. Like it's funny because I met Bertie Ahern actually in Drumcondra. I lived near Drumcondra at one time back in 2021. And we had a brief chat. I stopped him, like, I was just gassed to see him because, hey, Bertie, like that. And I said, my name's Bertie as well. And it just like he asked me straight, he kind of asked me pretty much straight away. He says, are you christened Bartholomew as well? I says, I am, so it's a weird
Right.
one, the Bertie and the Bartholomew. Yeah.
I always thought it was
Yeah.
Albert, but
Yeah.
that
That's it. A lot of people do. Yeah. Yeah.
that'll tell you what I need. I know anyway. But you're like for the good-eared person, that is definitely not a drum contra accent.
Definitely not. No, I'm from County Kerry, Tralee,
Be-
County Kerry.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful
And
stuff.
yeah, yes. Yeah. 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 I don't think I have like very strong Kerry accent, but it comes up, it comes out like.
Do you know, hanging around with
Um,
me, Bertie, now, and I get very country when I talk to other people, and you'll probably end up with a thick, some sort of country,
that's it.
Munster-esque accent of some sort,
Yeah.
anyway, as a
It's
result.
happening
Like,
already. I can
it's
feel it.
just, just your ancestors
Yeah,
crawling up through you,
straight
going,
up.
Jesus.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Start
Exactly,
talking
exactly. Yeah.
football 5 minutes in. That's the podcast ruined. Nothing to do with anything with this football.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I
But then
first,
you're not the first actually to say about the name. Sorry, you're not the
yeah,
first
go
to
ahead.
say about my name. Back in my acting days, I won't say who it was. It was a casting director. She never get. I nearly got a couple of things out of her, but never quite. She said it about my name. She said, like it really perked me up. She says that name. She
Yeah.
said, like it's brilliant. And I was just like, but just give me a role, like, you know what I mean? Like, it
What bank
looked
am I going to
brilliant
cash that
on
in?
the
Yeah, yeah.
like if it looks brilliant, why don't we put it on the screen? Let's have it in the credits. Like I nearly got two big things with her. It didn't quite happen, and I never really kind of got anywhere after that. But it always stuck with me when she said that. She really meant it, like, you
Well,
know.
don't they say
Um,
that like when you'll be walking out of a casting of Jesus Christ, I've done enough of them things in my time.
yeah.
And they say like, you should leave something that's iconic, not iconic, but something that's memorable, like, wear
Yeah.
glasses in and go, should I do this without my glasses or with my glasses? Just so that you sound a bit
Yeah.
different than other people. I never did any of that shit. I, I
No.
did. I mean, I again came very close, turned up in small. Anything I ever got, Bertie, was purely more or less by a phone call. It was like, hey, can you be in the thing? Because
Yeah.
you're exactly actually don't bother putting you in with anybody else because I would fail miserably at being cast in a thing like the
Yeah, it's a horrible. I've done the cattle mart thing. In I can't remember the name they played the fish pond kind of
yeah
commercial actors and stuff.
yeah
I've done loads of them, but I got one big one out of it, and I remember turning up to the casting, and it was like I turned up, I didn't even know what was happening, and I kind of walked in late, and I was
yeah.
just like nonchalantly there, like what's going on, and like there was fellas dressed in biking gear and stuff like that, and I was like, I said, what am I doing here? And I walked in, and he goes, "Will you just get up on the bike?" I was in a meteor ad, like lead person in a meteor ad, massive money, and I just got up on the bike and I was actually wearing a shirt like yourself, like a check kind of a like almost like a shirt like that. And I just got up and I was cycling away and I just knew immediately I got it because they're all lit up behind. And I was like, what am I doing? That's good here. Like, but like it was just amazing to me because all the other times I went, I was prepared and I was worried.
Yeah.
And like when I rocked in, I was like, what's going on? I was looking, I was like, what it was just like, I don't know, there was the energy, my energy was just didn't it's not that I didn't care, it's just I didn't have enough time to care or kind of think about it, you know?
Do you know, I think that comes across sometimes because that has been said to me. You're as well to go in and not give a shite when you go in there. which is all well and good. But
Yeah.
if you do give a shite, then it's very hard to hide that shite. You know what I mean? But
Oh, one
all right,
second. Sorry, Tom. My
yes, gotcha again.
I'm so sorry. So
No,
sorry. I'm dealing with a couple of technical things there. Sorry, Tom. But yeah, man. So you were saying about like going in and just not being prepared, not
listen,
thinking too much about it.
it was exactly that. But when you do give a shit, but almost everybody said that. But I think ad energy sometimes they have in their head what they're looking for. I remember I was doing an ad for
Yeah.
Guinness, and I was a shoo in. I got we a few of us got it, but they were like on the day the director. And this is how cruel ads are. I would tell people like don't forget it because this is the worst. They were like on the day if you're in the ad, if they're happy enough that you get to it, so you're guaranteed 350 quid, right? I was like,
Yeah.
just not a bad day's work for arsing around inside in a pub in
Yeah.
over on the north side. No, it wasn't on the north side, it was Poolbeg Street. And it's grand.
Mm.
But they said if you end up just being the featured face of it, which they'll decide kind of on the day, and
Mm.
you'll get 10 grand. I was like, ah,
Yeah.
lads.
Yeah. It's
And
unreal.
literally your man was going along, he's going, and it was like something out of, oh my God, it was like something out of almost slave time, sort of want of a better phrase. He's going along the bar and we're all kind of standing there as we're being told. And the guy, this director from Canada is going, yeah. And he's doing that wanky thing, Bertie, where he's making a rectangle with his face. Like, would you ever,
Oh
come
man.
on, just use your eyes. Just look at it. You're 3 feet away. Use your eyes. And he's doing this thing passing along. He's like, and he gets to me and he said something like, no to and he went
Oh.
to Eddie. I went, we're making a fucking ad. What do you want from me?
What the
But the lad beside me,
pretentious.
he just didn't know what. And the lad beside, and he went, yeah, maybe. And as it turns out, that lad featured. But we looked, the same. Like there was nothing extra, whatever
Yeah.
this guy was saying. But I just remember walking away going, 350 quid's not bad for today. But the way they did it, it was like, oh, come
Yes.
on, come
The
on.
three the 350 felt probably a little bit tarnished by that, like, you know what I mean?
Uh,
Because like if you yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about because those times with the car, like the amount of times going in and you're literally just you're discarded, right? It's
yeah,
like you're just like, okay, bye, like and that but that particular time, there's been other times as well in feature films and stuff and short films where you just know like you've gotten it. You just
yeah.
have this feeling, or at least you're exceptionally close to getting it. You
Yes,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
the way they are with you, and it's an energetical thing as well. It's kind of like dating, because I cast short films and things like that. And for want of a better way of describing it, it's a bit like dating, where it's kind of like it just is a kind of a feeling, like the performance, yes, the way they look, yes, but there is this kind of energetical thing about it as well.
Of
So
course, yeah, yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, there's
100,
there's sure say like stand up, which is what main game, but you see
yeah,
it in people. You guy could walk out with next to no material, but if he's got energy, and he's
yeah,
got that thing. There's a thing that's in people that can't be
yeah,
taught, can't be replicated.
yes.
As the kid now, he is a kid. He's only like 22 or whatever, but he's man. I've had him open for me a few times, and he's just got the thing. The
What do
material.
you mind giving do you mind giving his name
Oh,
or
Chris McShane. Yeah, I've talked about him.
Chris
Like, and
McShane? Rings a bell.
he's from Cork, and well, he's originally from
Mm,
up the north, I think, but you wouldn't know it by his accent. But he just has the thing. We drove all the way from.
mm,
I picked him up in Cork one time. We drove to the back end arse of county. It would be still Cork, but it was Bantry back roads, and I
yeah.
mean,
Oh
he
yeah, it's far
melted my
out.
ear for the whole drive back and the whole it there on
Yeah,
just the art form, the craft, and where do you
yeah,
push words? How do you What are you
yeah,
thinking when you're elongating those vowels there? And I'm like, oh, I don't care about being asked these questions because you absolutely have the thing. Like it was like meeting,
yeah,
somebody who absolutely has the bug and will be a stand-up. That's it. Bottom line,
yeah.
that's what you're put on this earth to do
But that
stand-up.
that that is wonderful though, that when someone has it doing well, but they're still inquisitive and wanting to learn more and more and more, and they're asking
Yeah,
those questions, and it's infectious. Like, and I love that because I think there's a difference between having talent and kind of being wasteful about it and just kind of, treating it like it's kind of your God-given right to get things instead of like being that person where you've been given something, but you're also wanting to learn and
yeah,
soak in
yeah.
everything. I think that's unbelievable. People like that deserve everything that they get.
And
That's what I
that's
think.
every opportunity I have to give the guy a gig. He's getting a gig, like, big
Yeah, it's
ones too,
amazing.
like, you know what I mean? Because it'll bring him on.
Yeah.
And then a small little bit of me would have pride in that, like going, yeah, look at him this year. Next year now
Yes,
he'll be,
yes. It's a great name, by the way, Chris McShane. That's
yeah,
a good name too.
it's a great,
Yeah,
yeah. And he's got his own
yeah.
unique style. So he's one
Mm,
for the future for sure. Now tell me,
definitely.
I came across you, it was TikTok, first when
Mm,
I came across you. And like, you had initially you had kind of had to figure that you look great, like it would pan to you, and it was clear that you knew what a camera was and you knew what a
mm,
setting was. Could you only have somebody for a split second to go, do I
yeah.
swipe on and go to another person dancing, or do I stop and listen to this person who's going to say something interesting? So you had
Mm,
that, and straight away I was like, oh Jesus. Because I'm always excited when I come across an Irish person who's saying something interesting. All
mm,
well and good if
mm,
it's an American or a British person, you're like, yeah, but it's a bit
mm.
hard to listen to. And everything you
It
say,
is a bit hard.
you know.
I mean, it's always well intentioned, but it's always a bit. It's definitely a bit hard to listen
But
to it.
there
Yeah.
seems to be always a bit of sauce, especially when it's an
Mm,
American. It's like, well, I don't know. Are you saying this to get clicks, or are you saying this because you actually believe it? You know, that kind of way. Sometimes it's like I'm not saying there isn't an
yeah.
authenticity in it, but there's sometimes is there genuine? Like, what's your goal here? Because,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
now I'm
mm,
I'm
mm.
getting deep into like a 15-second watching of a person, but that's my reasoning for why I ended up stopping on you. And I was like, oh Jesus Christ! And
Yeah.
of course, you're saying the relatable stuff that I'm interested to. Like, so
Mm.
for you, where did the start of? Because it wasn't TikTok that started you on your interested in
No,
it is, but
no.
you're obviously in the film and performance world, and then
Mm,
where did the two marry up that you had an interest in, like, ancient mythology and stuff, like Irish mythology and
mm.
history as well?
Yeah, well, like in terms of the interest in, history, mythology, folklore, that's been ever since I was a child. It's been there's a few different kind of origin stories around it, I suppose, and I've talked about this kind of on my podcasts and stuff like that, and in other people's podcasts as well. It's definitely to do with my father and the locations of where we kind of grew up. So like in
Yes.
West Kerry and also in the Tralee area, but also as well, there is this big story in the Tralee homeland, the Queen Scotia mythology,
Oh
and
yeah.
she's buried in the homelands of Tralee. So like basically up in the Slievemish Mountains, it overlooks Tralee town and bay. And we as kids were kind of going up there, like, from by ourselves from around 10, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
So we would like literally go to her grave, you know what I mean? So there was this massive interest in the story. And, also coupled with my father's kind of interest in history, the stories that we were being told as we were going back to the place called Clahan. So my father was a fishery bailiff. So I would have spent every summer in this place called Clahan in West Kerry at the foot of Mount Brandon.
Yes.
So this whole area is steeped in history. St. Brendan himself, you know what I mean? Um, the Connaught Pass region where there's all these kind of mythological stories above Cuchulainn as well on the way out to Caherconry, Connaught Pass itself. There is a mythological story to the Connaught Pass. I just can't quite get it because it's a bit obscure.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so that's kind of the foundation of it, and also that kind of was all that's stuck with me in terms of my own interest in storytelling, and kind of that kind of was always my thing, and
Yeah.
supernatural
Yeah.
kind of was
Yeah.
coming into it as well. But in terms of like coming forward, and it kind of, I can't say like I was always interested in. I suppose I was interested in the movies like Braveheart growing up, Gladiator and stuff like that, and a very commercial level. I always had this interest in kind of historical stories. But then I suppose I got older and I kind of wasn't thinking about, anything to do with history or studying it or any interest in kind of reading too many books about it. I mean, I would always have a little bit of a vague interest, but the new kind of phase of interest really started around 2015, 2016, when I was immersed in the film industry.
Yeah.
And I heard that there was one time around 2015 that the junior cert was going to lose mandatory history just for a brief time. I think they threw it out after a while because Michael D. Higgins was writing against it and everything. You know, they were trying to basically get rid of compulsory history for junior cert students. And I was just completely baffled by this. And then I was thinking about it. Is this like a homogenization of cultures? Is this a globalization kind of a thing? And then I started researching history again. So I got into the story of Brian Boru. Then I started writing a script about Brian Boru. I got money off Kerry County Council to write a script on Brian Boru. I went out to the Blasket Islands and wrote a script in 2018. So that's how I kind of started this new phase of like really getting in depth into history. You know, since that time. And I kind of rediscovered like how unbelievable Irish history is,
Yeah,
you know, including mythology and folklore, because I kind of look at it as all one thing. I know history, mythology is different, but really it's not that different when you understand what mythology is. It's the oral histories of Ireland.
yeah,
And also folklore, all I think it all has its origins in actual real events.
of course.
Whether those
Yeah,
yeah, you know, so that's kind of in a nutshell. And then I suppose just to finish up, like in terms of me getting on TikTok and all that, that was kind of, as you said, marrying up of these skills. And, you know, after lockdown and after, you know, there was just a huge change in my own kind of outlook on life. What did I want to do? And I didn't really want to pursue an acting career anymore. I found filmmaking even quite difficult. The fact that the whole world just closed down, the whole world closed down, you know, just out of nowhere, it kind of scared me a little bit.
yeah,
So I started doing social media content and I just, you know, started telling stories. And the Queen Scotia story is the one that blew up on TikTok in 2022. And as you said, like I know how to, you know, present a camera, you know, that's all from my acting days. And I saw other people kind of telling stories, and I said I would do something similar, and I tried it out. I did not think for a second that it was going to go as it did. I really didn't. I had no idea. I just said, look, I'll try it out. I
yeah.
was kind of like looking for something, like I was looking for a new creative outlet, basically, you
But
know.
isn't it gas like you could pick up a hammer and chisel, or you
Mm,
can get on Twitter or TikTok? Creativity. This is what I often go rooting for people, and you can even find it in sports stars and how they go about. I love how people end up
yeah,
rooting it out of themselves some which way. It'll come out even if all you're doing is you know what I mean, putting
yeah,
up wallpaper. Like you'll do something will have to come creative out of you. It's like it's bursting out of your pores.
absolutely,
And like you said, I
absolutely.
didn't know how it was going to go, Tom. Sure, I started TikTok, but of course it went brilliantly. Like, you know what I mean? Of course it did. Like,
Mm,
you know, maybe you didn't know, but there was a subconscious nugget inside your brain going, oh, this is going to be class. This is going to be class. I promise you. Drive on with
well,
it. Like,
I I did honestly, Tom. Like afterwards, yes, because I knew what would come afterwards. I kind of had more confidence afterwards. But when I first did the Scotia story, this is actually literally what I thought. I thought it would be great for Tralee people
yes,
because
yeah,
it would
yeah,
put kind of it was something that we could. I was thinking at least they would like it. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Because it's our own homeland. But the opposite thing kind of happened. It was everybody else around the world that loved it because, of course, it brings in this Egyptian influence. It brings in the African, you know, kind of North African influence, and also then you're talking from a European kind of a thing because they travel through Europe, and up from Spain. And then, of course, the Scots were involved in it as well because Scotia would have given the name to Scotland as Scoti, So there was this whole influx of all these different people talking about it. I was getting grief as well, of course, because that's what you get on social media,
Brilliant. Yeah.
which was interesting. Yeah, it was mad.
Yeah,
I love it
brilliant.
now. I love
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love it now. But at the start, it was scary, you know. But yeah, yeah. So basically, I genuinely did not think it was going to go well at that time. But then I knew once that went well, I says, okay, now I've got a load of stuff to tell, you know.
Isn't that, yeah, because Jesus Christ, when you open that cupboard, that it hasn't
Yeah,
really, prior to you, like it hadn't been tapped into before. I mean, heaven forbid we get one more Egyptologist on there. Like, you know what I mean? Okay, there's no doubt Egypt is cool, but Jesus, you know what I mean? I can nearly draw the inside of
yeah,
the chambers myself now without ever being there. Like, but
yeah,
when you
yeah,
opened the cupboard and went, hold on, nobody's ever made a right job of this. From
yeah.
do you know, Brian Brew to Fionn McCool to Cuchulainn, you know, nobody's.
Mm,
I remember there was years and years ago there was mooted that there was talks with Fassbender to do a Cuchulainn movie
yeah,
years ago, but never
yeah.
went anywhere. Like, um,
I'm always kind of like, this might sound a little bit controversial, but I actually genuinely have a little respect for these A-list actors that they're not doing more for it. Like they just surely can talk to the right people, and they don't need to go like that's the problem with it as well. It's like, let's do a Crew Cullen movie where it has to be like the Marvel universe. You could get down to it like a tiny little part of it. Make something for about 10 million. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Get a little part of the story, like, start off small. Surely Fassbender and these people can get 20 million together, 50 million together, and actually make something like a nice little independent film
I
in
can,
that world.
of
Like,
course, like when you look at something like
yeah,
that, like the Norseman one, you know what I mean? It was like fairly I won't say it was. There was nothing fancy about it, but it ended up being an enthralling movie because it was just so dark and harsh looking. You know what I mean?
unbelievable.
You know, but
Yeah,
no
yeah,
pyrotechnics. You know what I mean? No huge CGI needed. Just one
no,
tall, scary looking dude with a beard. Like that was it essentially.
yeah. Yeah, I think do you know what, the Viking raiding scenes are unbelievable in that movie. Like, I mean, they're incredible. You're in the Viking raids, like, you know what I mean? But I just think they fell off a cliff after a while. The movie itself,
Yeah,
did
yeah,
you think? Are
yeah,
you talking about? Yeah, it fell off a
yeah.
cliff. This the second half, but I still really liked it. Um, but look, it is cool. Like it's an amazing. But going back to like say like bringing say these mythological stories to life, it can be done. Like it can be done. I just don't understand why they don't put more effort into it. I think there really is a block. I really think there's a block to elevating the Irish story. At that level. I can't find any other reason for it. Like you
It's, I mean,
know.
because they'll do it. I mean, they'll do it for. I remember there was we watched it only because it was a well made um drama. Now it was dubbed over and it wouldn't, it wouldn't be one I typically, but it was dubbed over and it was basically loosely telling the story of how the 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 depths of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. And I mean, you're
Hmm.
kind of going, sure, Jesus, you're putting this out, and it was dubbed over because it was actually Turkish made. But you're like,
Hmm.
nobody else would have an interest in this, bar somebody from Turkey. Like, so why not make
Hmm.
something for, so for Ireland as well? Like, I mean, I think if it's a good enough story and a cool enough story, it'll be taken up no matter where. There's a huge diaspora out there too that would absolutely dig it.
It's massive. I don't understand it because the big. I had a controversial kind of take on the Vikings. Like, I don't see why it's controversial. Maybe my approach to the videos, maybe perhaps, but I put out there like saying like Vikings has been here. Especially the first Vikings. It's been here. It was here from around 2010 to whatever time, nearly 10 years or something. And in that whole time, they're here using Irish locations, Irish actors, everything, tax incentives. Brilliant, amazing, nothing wrong with that. People took me up the wrong way as if I was giving out about that. They were like, tax incentives are amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
but why wasn't the Gaelic story involved with the Vikings? Because we had 400 years of history with them. Like Ivar the Boneless, why wasn't he based in Dublin like he was?
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
yeah,
based
yeah.
here. You know what I mean? They sent him off to Roos. He never went there. And the Irish producers involved in the Vikings, like there's Irish producers involved, high up guys, high up individuals. I won't name it. It's easy to find who they are. Surely they're talking to the creator, and like they're getting massive. Like people say, oh, the tax incentives. Technically, if you kind of look at it, tax incentives work. We do pay the people provide the cash.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
cash. The cash is like you get the cash in advance, and then you kind of put it back through the economy because you're creating jobs for the economy. You're creating work for the workers and stuff. But it's initially you're getting a cash you're getting a cash amount when you start the production.
Yeah.
That's how tax incentives work. A cash, what am I looking for? A cash input, like, um, So like my point was like they're getting this, but yet they're not including the Irish story. Yet there's Irish producers involved in it, and an Irish government is involved in it. And we've 400 years of history with the Vikings, but yet there's not one single story
Yeah,
of
I
of
would
the
have
Vikings and the
expected,
Irish.
because I mean, all people get
Not one
excited by
single
was they were
story.
like, "Oh, look, it's it's they shot in Wicklow," and you're like, "Yeah, but you coulda like how was there not a braver person to put a bit of a lean on the writers and go, hey, by the way, while you're here,
The name Wicklow is
yeah,
derived from Viking
yeah,
origin.
there you go. Like you couldn't lean on them a little bit and go, "Hey, while you're at it, lads, you may write in a bit there, write in a bit about us there while
Yeah.
you're at it."
Any chance our story could be told, like just for a scene, maybe, perhaps, maybe even an episode. Like, for instance, Floki went to I can't remember exactly how the story goes, but the place that he went to, one of the places, I'm not sure, I can't remember, did he go to several? But it was based on the real event where
Right.
they discovered, I think it's Iceland, or what
Yeah,
is it,
Iceland. Yeah,
Iceland,
yeah.
or yeah, something along those lines, or is it the Faroe Islands or something? So they shot it in the location where this man would have gone to, right?
Yeah.
So there's the example of the real event with the based on the real character shooting it in the real location. But in Ireland, we're here for 10 years and there's not one Irish character in the whole show, but yet they're getting the do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's scandalous. Like it's completely criminal in my opinion. I mean, criminal, when I say criminal, I mean like in terms of artistic
It was a
criminality, like,
hugely wasted opportunity. Like when you're
it's,
like literally
yeah,
half the story of him is a here. Do you know what I mean? Half the
yeah,
story you're in the place that
yeah,
you're already,
yeah.
if it
And
looks
as you
like
said,
it
the
should,
diaspora,
if it looks like
yeah,
it should, then there's probably a good story here somewhere too. If it
yeah.
didn't,
And you have the Irish actors.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you had like, I mean, look, for instance, I'm not saying Gabriel Byrne should have played a different character, but there's an example. Like he was in the first
yes, yeah,
season. Gabriel Byrne, there's plenty of actors that would have Timothy V. Murphy, who I wanted to play Brian Boru, perhaps will still play Brian Boru. Perfect actor for it, like, and yeah, that's all I have to say in it, really. But like, I definitely think there's a block. I think for me, when I look at it, it's like if you push them on it, it's like would they say like there's not enough of an audience for it? But like that's not true because there's like I don't know how factual all of this is, but there's certainly up to hundreds of millions of people claiming to be Irish, right?
yeah.
Around the world. There's literally about 150 to 200 claiming it. Not saying it's true or not. They claim it. Are they not going to be interested in it? Of course
I
they would be,
To be
you
fair,
know?
the more I think about it, you wouldn't if it was a cool enough story, it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? You could, it doesn't
Exactly.
really matter if it's
Yeah.
going to, because we've all watched
Yeah.
plenty of movies from places and but we no idea where they are.
Exactly.
You're like, is it supposed to be a cool
Exactly.
movie? Like, if it's a good movie,
Exactly.
it won't really matter. Like, but the stories are already sitting
Yeah.
there, ready to
Yeah.
go. Do you know what I mean?
Unbelievable stories. Battle of Clontarf happened 50 years before the Battle of Hastings, like, and it was one of the most, it is for me probably the one of the biggest top three pivotal moments in Irish history. And also it like the Vikings never conquered Ireland.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
They'd never conquered, but Vikings sat on the throne of England. So I often think the writer Michael Hirst, I actually think like for me, I personally think there's a bit of a thing about the Irish, like, that
Yeah,
he
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want to, he didn't want to elevate them, But he
Well,
didn't
you,
have to because Ivor the Boneless was here. He could have had he could have had the kingship of Dublin, which was actually a Viking city state, and it was twinned with York.
yes,
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect. They didn't even have to have it where, it's all about the High Kings of Ireland. They could just have little bits where there's the little battles going on. Perhaps some of the Gaelic High Kings at that point were in kind of, were in cahoots, right, with them, because that was happening. There
yeah.
was times when the Viking kings of Dublin were working with the kings. It wasn't always battling, like, So there was so much room for it, like, And I thought the Roos story with Ivor the Boneless, I thought it was a bunch of nonsense. Like it was just
It
crap,
was weird.
you know?
It didn't make any
Yeah,
sense. Like, and then he comes back out of that, and
yeah,
what's the difference? The the only thing I knew one of the actors. He actually was one of the lads.
yeah.
He was one of the Hardy Bucks. Um,
Yes,
He was in
yes.
it like, but he looks the part. You know what I
He
mean?
was the redhead lad,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Eddie
The
Durkin is his
redhead
name.
guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant. I knew so many people on that show. Um, there was one of the best cameos. I don't know if you I don't know if we're going off on tangents here, Tom.
Oh yeah.
But you're all right. Yes, there was one of the best cameos I've ever seen. Um, a guy from Cork. Do you remember when Rolo kind of he turns on Ragnar, but it was just before he gets handed Normandy, and
Yes, yeah, yeah.
he comes back to kind of, there's a Viking outpost kind of near, and he comes back and slaughters them. And there's this one guy, he's a lad from Cork, and he actually worked on a film that I was producing, Misty Button. And the guy that was directing Misty Button, I said it to him. I says, watch that episode. Watch that episode of Vikings. This guy is perfect for the role. Because he's like, oh no. Like he has this big, huge dramatic scene where he's like he's dying, like, he's like, we're gonna get you. Unbelievable stuff, like, So I always loved it when I saw people that I actually knew, like colleagues and things like that, working on it. Like, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
great.
yeah. And do
Yeah.
you tell me this? Do you find because I saw you putting up something about because I asked you I love finding people that read books because literally almost nobody
Yeah.
reads books anymore. So I'll blatantly ask a question and I think you were speaking about Fionn McCool, the real Fionn McCool, and I had a
Yeah.
question because not that it was been debated, but it was he's a local TD, and we were on the two Johnny's podcasts. The two of us were, and we are
Yeah.
having a crack. And I said, where did you get all the Fionn McCool stuff from? Like, because I was like, fucking Cashel up the road, and this isn't Care, our local town. Cashel up the fucking road is all
Yeah.
Brian Boru stuff, and so they can keep him. We're going with Fionn McCool, and he rooted out the story.
Yeah.
That Fionn he'd hunted across literally apart. Well, by the route, if you drew the route, it goes right through the site where we're building the house at the minute, where he was supposed to have hunted this
Wow.
giant stag all the way. He got him, but he rested by the River Shore in near
Yeah.
Care, and they have a
Yeah.
35-foot um, Fionn McCool lying in the river outside Care
I've
Castle.
heard about this,
It's
and I'm
huge.
absolutely. Wait, when did they put that in?
All literally about I'd say about a year and a half ago,
Okay,
at most, and but
gotcha.
since then now they've
Yeah,
added
yeah.
very cool,
That's
like
class.
they're very cool bits now. They must be 10 foot tall. They have two wolfhounds carved. They got somebody to chainsaw carve two
Class.
wolfhounds watching
It's
over him.
wonderful.
They have
Wonderful.
Fia the
Yeah.
deer then, and somebody very cool did that. They did her it's in limestone, but they did her like in three separate parts. So when you're looking straight on, you're like, oh, that's a deer looking at me. But as you walk closer, step over to the side, it's three stepped apart part. Somebody really
That
arty did it.
is awesome.
But of course,
Awesome.
drives kids crazy. Then they want to know more about Fionn McCool. They want to know
Yes.
about more.
Brilliant.
And of course, you're looking
Mm.
at this impeccable Butler Castle right behind, which adds to any story. Do you know? You're like, well, this is a fairy tale. We're
Yeah.
living in a fairy tale right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was,
Carrick Castle. That's Stanley Kubrick shot there. I'm nearly sure Stanley Kubrick shot Barry Lyndon there.
did he? Because I know
Nearly sure Carrick Castle. Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah.
they, do you know what? I think you're right. I know there was the latest one. Was it the Green Knight? Was one of the latest ones. With your man from Slumdog Millionaire, and
Yes.
they shut the town down. Was it 2 years ago? It was kind of during lockdown. It was with
Mm.
Matt Damon was doing a medieval one as well because it's
Yeah.
perfect. It's just off the motorway from Cork to Dublin, and
Yeah.
it's loads of
Yeah.
parking for whoever needs parking in the way of the production,
Mm. Mm.
and it's a ready to go castle. It looks like it was built only yesterday, but it's obviously
It's amazing. Yeah.
yeah hundreds of years old. And finally, I mean,
Mm.
in fairness to Andy Maloney, to give him a shout out, the local senator and the RTD, I should say, and he was right. He was going, Jesus, we need to be using this. Look at it. Look at this area. Like, and we may as well
Mm.
jump on the Fionn McCool
Mm.
thing as well. Like, of course, the wife was absolutely buzzing because we even, named our child Fionn. There's a cat wandering around called Finnegas. Now, he's a bastard. He is, he's,
What's he called? Angus, is it?
no, Finnegas. We call the cat
Oh,
Finnegas.
Finnick. Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It just broke up for a second. Yeah,
Um,
Finnicus after the Druid. Yeah,
the druid,
yeah,
but he is a wandering one.
yeah.
He comes back during the winter, but shags off. So maybe that's what Finnegas did
That's
back in the day.
class, isn't it?
Yeah, he goes off fighting
That's
for basically the
unreal.
summer and fighting and riding, no doubt, and then comes
He's
back.
fishing. He's fishing,
He's
man. He's
fishing.
fishing.
He's still looking for that salmon. He's still looking for that salmon. Well, I hate to tell you,
He's
Finnegas.
still broke up. He's broke up, Pat. He's still broke up, like, you know.
Sickened.
He can't let
Imagine,
it go. Can't let it
imagine
go.
poor old Finnegas, real Finnegas, like, Jesus,
Yeah,
man, oh,
yeah. 7 years.
lads. Fucking fish, man. I
He
told you,
made a big
mine.
mistake though. Yeah, he made a big mistake though. It was a big mistake letting him cook the salmon, like, you know.
Jesus
He
Christ.
slipped up. Yeah. But did you had a question about it, about a certain, was it the certain book you were about to ask
It
about
was no, it was
Fionn?
in relation. It was in relation to that. I was asking that time on. It was actually on TikTok. And in fairness, you messaged me back or replied back under. I was like, do you? Because it wasn't that we were rowing myself, but I was like, is there more to the story? That
Mm,
Fionn had you heard more about it? That Andy was on about that day that apparently he'd hunted a stag across the Galtee Mountains across through the Glen of
mm,
Arlo.
mm.
Um, and we were, I wasn't denying it. The lads were like, "Are you sure?" I think Fionn McCool's stories were kind of further up the country. I was like, "No, I'm telling you, I
No,
didn't."
he traveled all around. He traveled all
Yes,
around. Yeah, 100%. That's a fact. He traveled all around, length and breadth of the country.
there's there's
Yeah.
because I remember prior to us having our child name and whatever. I remember there was. I said, "You have to listen to this," because I it was my choice for a
Mm,
finish. But there was a great on YouTube. They made him years ago, and it's Ronnie Drew. Did you ever listen to it? Ronnie
mm.
Drew doing
Didn't know.
telling the stories, telling uh, Irish mythological stories in short
Class,
versions.
class.
And of
Yeah,
course, having such a great voice too.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And we're sitting there going, hold on. So he's like, so Fionn McCool's from a same sex, his parent, he had two mothers, basically.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, yeah,
way before
yeah,
his time. Like,
yeah. Oh no, the women, like, that, because I kind of focused on that in my kind of documentary. I'm really proud of that one, actually. Um, and if anybody's watching this, you can watch it on my YouTube channel. It's actually the first video you see. I'm leaving it up as a kind of, like, the main video.
brilliant.
And yeah, so he would have been brought up by, literally, by women, like, literally for his whole life, up until the time he went to Finnegans, and he would have been trained by a warrior woman. There was his mother and his auntie were involved hugely in his life. And so he would have been surrounded by that kind of feminine energy growing up, which is interesting, because I feel like people don't realize that back in those times, the feminine, the females were hugely important. And I know that sounds like really almost, there's no way of kind of saying it without sounding a little bit misogynistic or something,
Yeah,
but they were
yeah, yeah,
hugely
yeah.
important, like. But no, it's like they had such status, like, and they were everything was on merit, like, it was a meritocracy, like, and it was like, if you had the skills, it didn't fucking matter, like,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know and women had, there was a lot more to them back then than you would imagine, and I think it's not really looked at properly, and that's a prime example, like, that Fionn McCool, one of our greatest heroes, was brought up by women, you know.
That was the bit that caught me. I was like, because of course,
Yeah.
you hear the story of, the Pirate Queen, and there was, I mean, there was again a story, and I've asked a bunch of people, and they've never heard, but by now, whether the Romans didn't have a go at Ireland or not, for whatever reason, to Hiller to Connacht and all the rest of these stories that we hear, but apparently that a scouting general and whatnot to see what was what over had met some of the most ferocious women, warrior women,
Mm,
and some had filed their teeth down for purely fighting purposes. And he was like, "I lads,
mm,
if this is what if this is what they're fighting each other with," he says, "we can't.
mm,
No, there's no
mm,
point in getting even dipping our
mm.
toe in this because those people are just absolutely ferocious. Let's just leave it, just back
Do you know
away."
what? In terms of the Roman battalions and stuff like that, and they were certainly scouting Ireland. If people think that they weren't scouting Ireland and checking us out, it's just silly. Like,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people that,
Why would you come that far and go, nah,
yeah,
you're
oh
fine.
no, they didn't want it. The fox and the grapes kind of a thing. Like, nah, it's just, and that's why we had hill forts, basically. I'm being sarcastic now, but that's, like, for instance, in the Tralee area, even, like, there's this huge hill fort that was uncovered, literally looking over the bay. So, like, why are these hill forts there? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And this
Yeah.
this was dated back to 20. This is potentially up to 120 AD, right? Up to
Right.
20 B. Sorry, 120 BC up to 20 AD. This is what the dates range was.
Right.
And then someone said something to me. I don't want to mention who it is just in case he doesn't want to be shouted out, like, but he said something interesting to me, and I just was like shocked. When I heard it, it just made so much sense. Now it is speculation, but like for instance, a lot of these mythological tales, there's a theory that, well, there is a complete fact to it, that the Christians, when they started writing down these stories, they would have added their own flair to it because
Yeah.
of the Christianization of stuff, and they would always kind of favor the Roman view, and kind of just be a little bit, whitewash it a little bit, you know what I mean, just to make
Yeah.
it sound a little bit more ideal. But for instance, the Battle of Ventry, which is Fionn McCool and his Fianna
Uh-huh.
fighting an invading force. So to take, like, so when Fionn died, it was around, I think, 120 AD or something along those lines, in the 2nd century. That's when it's written into the annals of Ireland. So let's just say in his fighting years, it would have been the 1st century. Who were the main force going around the place at that time? The Romans, of course. Who else was it? And the person that they were, the Fionn and the Fianna were fighting, was Dara Dunn, King of the World.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Dara, who's Dara Dunn? It sounds like an Irish name, but obviously they just probably added it in. Oh, it's Dara Dunn, some guy,
Yeah.
but really it's probably the emperor's, like, battalion, like, you know what I mean? Who else was king of the world at the time, according to
Yeah.
the Christians? You
Yeah.
know,
It wasn't the
um,
Mexicans, as they say. Like, you know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah, I'm Dara Dunn. This is one of our cousins from America, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, so it's like, and obviously people will say, well, it's only a mythological story, but like, okay, fair enough. But these were once the oral histories of Ireland, and they became more fantastical as the years went on. But let's just break it down. Let's just say there was an invading force, and there was an actual, and a domestic army of some sort, fighting them. Let's just say that did happen. And in that time, who else would it be? That was
Yeah.
invading at those times. And it mightn't have been like a complete invasion. It might have been just a scouting party and a battalion, like, coming onto the shore, and they were attacked immediately and defeated. And I reckon that did happen around the shores of Ireland, where it was like they rocked up on and they said, look, it's too much, there's too many things happening here for us to kind of check, and I think as well, when you actually look at history and you go further on, it wasn't until they actually had the insider information with Dermot McMurrough, the sellout,
Yes.
that was that when they got him and that insider information, and they had, like, obviously time had moved on, the Romans were finished, the Roman Empire kind of changed form, and then you had the English involved, and King Henry, and Strongbow, and Pope Adrian II with his papal laudability. Plus, you had the insider that knew exactly how things worked with the kings, and maybe perhaps there was a kind of a coup d'état of some sort as well, where Dermot rocked up and said, "Look, I'm sorry," and next thing the Anglo Normans are behind them, like, I'm only just, you know what I mean? But like I'm saying, it wasn't until then that they felt comfortable to come in with the invading forces. Like, it wasn't until the Anglo Normans that there wasn't that there was a full invasion. It took that long. It took a very long time.
So yeah, the likelihood that we were never attacked or at least poked at prior to that is highly, highly
Yeah.
unlikely. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
the Vikings tried it. The Vikings were trying it. Like,
yeah,
they
yeah,
really
yeah.
tried it. They tried it for quite a long time and they couldn't get it. Like, and people then write off Battle of Clontarf as not an invasion, when there was potentially up to thousands of mercenaries coming in on behalf of Citric Silkenbeard, to think that they were just going to head home afterwards and not take lands. But in terms of like a full-on military invasion with like all sorts of geopolitical things going on, plus an insider, that was like 1169 with Dermot McMurrough and the Anglo-Normans. But before that, certainly with the Romans, I think that what was happening with the Romans as well, I know I'm jumping back and forth
No,
between
that's yeah, yeah.
timelines now, but with the Romans, they were dealing with Scotland, and they found Scotland horrendous, and they were even calling for genocide of the Scots. Like, that's how bitter they were about it. That's a fact, actually. They called
Jeez.
for genocide at one point. Yeah, yeah. They were bitter, like, and I think they were dealing with their own stuff in Britannia, like, and then of course they couldn't fully conquer the Welsh as well because there was certain parts of it they couldn't get to, and I think they just rocked up to the Irish shores a couple of times, and they just said, you know what, leave them off,
Yeah.
and it took that long. Then, yeah, so it's incredible to think about it.
And
Really is.
you found yourself then, because from what I was kind of picking up on was that Baru, then how did you, when you wrote for Baru, how was it that you chose, well, that's my man. That's who I'm gonna start focusing some of the
Yes,
writing on.
great question. Great question.
Because
Yeah,
we
it
just
was
pointed
like
out there's a rake you could have picked. You know what I mean? There's a ton you could have picked.
yeah,
Baru.
yeah, there's so much. Yeah, yeah. And it was never really, he never really struck me before. Like I knew that there was other people trying to make films with him. I think I can't what's his name? It was a guy from Cork. He had apparently he'd Leonardo DiCaprio and everything
Ah, Jesus.
to if you go, I know, imagine that, like, the Irish accent will be Dodge. It certainly wouldn't be a Clare man's accent anyway, that's for
No.
sure. Or Thomond, or like, but Clare, modern day
Yeah.
Clare. But Baru, I don't know. I just think when I heard, as I say, going back to that time when the history was being potentially taken off, that story just jumped up. And perhaps I was so foundationally kind of struck by, in terms of my own filmmaking kind of education, Braveheart was a huge,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, we watched that in school at 10 years old. Like, the teacher brought it in, like, and it was like, are you sure this is all right, lads? When they were cutting each other's heads off and stuff, like, um, and I think as well, there's a lot of similarities in the story, actually, when you look at the William Wallace story that Mel Gibson made
Yes.
compared to the real William Wallace story. Now, there is a lot of similarities with the story that Mel Gibson made and actually the real William Wallace story and actually Brian Boru. And I suppose maybe the Braveheart being one of my favorite movies of all time, perhaps there was that kind of, when I looked at his story, I was thinking to myself, wow, it is potential Irish Braveheart, like,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where I kind of, and it was also as well the way I know a couple of lads from the north, like, and I'm very respectful of them, and like we've great banter about this, like, about the Ian Eales, like, and it's
Yeah.
like he kind of he went in by, and he just overturned, he just said, you know what, it's not working, this thing is not working. We've been dealing with these Vikings of Limerick. I've subdued them now. I've subdued Waterford. Dublin needs subduing as well. And you guys, you're our high kings. You're the high kings of the northern half. We need a high king of the whole country. Now, loads of people deny that. They say, oh, he wasn't thinking that like that. I think I'm vehemently against all that. I think he was trying to unite the country. And I think he did have communication, because me and another lad did a live stream. Clans and Dynasties, a great guy, very good guy, Mihal. And he wouldn't be on the same school of thought as me. I think he's coming over more to what I'm saying. I think, but we would know, because we've been talking about this, like, and people don't think about this, that there was massive communication in these times. People think because they didn't have internet,
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was traders and merchants, and messengers, and kings were knowing what was going on in Europe, what was going on in England, what was happening. They were educated, from the monasteries about this, the missionaries. There was communication, so certainly things were coming over to Ireland. I like to think that actually Brian did have a vision, and he did know that there was something potentially bigger than the Vikings, perhaps at some point. And it was a kind of a thing, like, let's subdue these, let's incorporate the, and let's build something better, and maybe let's actually start, potentially even start moving over to Scotland, and maybe moving over to Wales, because they were doing that already with the Irish. The Irish were already living in parts of Scotland and parts of Wales, and there was this kind of, there are some theories that Brian was actually getting tribute from these places as well. So,
Oh,
there
right.
was something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's one theory that he was getting tribute from these places, and certainly the Scots did come over and help him in the Battle of Clontarf as well. Now, there's all sorts of political reasons for that, but Scots came over to the Battle of Clontarf to fight for Brian and fight for Ireland, like, so there is this whole thing. I don't think they were like, I don't think Brian was kind of, you know, um, just kind of reacting to stuff,
Yes,
and it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like building upon it, kind of in a reactionary way. Genuinely think he was a Napoleon kind of figure where there was this big, huge, he was a kind of a product of his time, and also it was a pivotal moment in our history, and he was the guy, like, you know what I mean? And it was a
Yeah.
tragic way it all ended, but and it's the same with Napoleon. In the end, Napoleon was just in the end he ended up in, on an island, and he was being slowly poisoned, like, but what he did in Europe was unbelievable, like, and I think Brian Brew was our Napoleon, or maybe our Charlemagne.
Yeah, because that's, I mean, as you said, like there was always going to be people coming across and you're going to pick up those. Hold on, so you're telling me they united the whole country, so under one, sure, that makes perfect sense. And we have a little bit of a parliament, and we work for the people. Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck it, that sounds like a plan to me. Yeah, because as you
Yes.
said, it's not reaction. You can't get that far being reactionary. Going, it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
What are they saying? Well, right, let's start. There has to be a plan
Yeah.
to go that far. Like, you
And
know what I
there
mean?
and there was one big thing, Tom, as well. And I know I'm very passionate about this. You probably know this. Um, there's one big indication where I think this is why he was different. Now, lots of people would disagree with it because of our own colonial past and stuff like that, and emperors and all that. But he was stated in the annals of Ireland as the Emperor of the Gael in 1005. So he went up to Armagh into the it was the St. Patrick's, yeah, chapel. Well, it wasn't the cathedral at the time. 20 ounces of gold on the altar, and he was announced as Emperor of the Gael by the bishop there. Like, it was a huge political statement. Like, and he was buried there later as well. When
Yes.
he died, he was buried there. I'm going to go up there now, actually, in April for a tour. But that's what he was marrying church and state. I know all of that is a horrible kind of an idea nowadays, but in this time it was all new, and there was almost this sense of like building a kind of a small little empire, so it'd be more intact, like, because of course the Roman Empire, the emperors would have been a huge inspiration for him as well, so
Well, I mean, let's.
that's what drew me to his story. Like, he was different.
He was different, but he understood. Kind of understood building a brand in underneath that one too, because he's like, well, like you can't rock up here being a nobody, and nobody's going to believe a nobody. They want somebody they can follow. So of course,
Yeah.
he goes up, rocks up with the money, goes, all right, look, let's make this legitimate. Do you know? Because
Yes.
your average fella on the street, your average, your average small, I say street, but you know what I mean. Your average small time Nook is going to say they're going to need the guy. You go, well, what does he have? Well, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, he's got great hair. Our actual guy's actually the king of the Gales, right? That's easier to
Yeah.
follow
Yeah.
than anything else. Do you know? Because it's a good brand. Like
Exactly.
it's a brand.
Exactly.
It's a brand. It's a title. It's a brand.
Yeah.
Whether he believed in it or not,
Exactly.
he understood. He understood what selling a
Yeah.
notion to people is first.
And it was legitimate. It was a kind of a new era, because this is what Hall educated me on. It's like, the Neils had their tradition and culture, which only went back a couple of 100 years. This is the thing where like they kind of started that whole thing, but that whole thing was kind of not working after a while. You know what I mean? And after 600 years, he would beg to differ. But like for me, this was the new era in high kingship, where it actually meant where you were actually king of the whole place. And the thing that separated him from everybody else is not, well, he didn't separate him from everybody else, but what made him unique was he was making political alliances with all these guys. There was guys, and they just kept rebelling and kept
Yeah,
rebelling and kept rebelling, and he kept subduing them and marrying daughters, and it was like just kept trying to make these alliances with them. He never slaughtered these guys. It was only one time he did that in his early years, where the guys that killed his older brother, the Limerick Vikings, he went out to Scattery Island and he just slaughtered them, like, and that was the only time he did that. For the rest of his life, it was all political alliances, and building, like,
which, as you said,
so
kind of unheard of at the time. You just beat somebody into submission back in the day. We're going to
yeah.
war. Simple as that. Whether it's between two parishes or
Yes.
whatever. Yeah, very, very in smart bloke. Like and it isn't off the
Mm,
ground he licked it. He must have done some sort of it's just studying of how they did it. As you said, like we like to think of people back
absolutely.
then. They were just all in trees. You're like, no, no. They
No.
had to.
No, there was huge education. The monastery should were a center of learning for potentially millennia with the Druids as well. And he was certainly educated in Clonmacnoise, but probably in Inishfallen as well, or and in Inishfallen. Perhaps it could have been or primary school kind of education in one island and then moved on to the other island. I
Right.
don't know how that works. Yeah, perhaps like um, so his education would have been of noble education, and the monks there were different. They weren't like what we think of Christ. They were like old school warrior kind of Celtic kind of Christian Gaelic. They were like, what I mean. They were hardy, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
living on islands and teaching them about Alexander the Great and Charlemagne and stuff like that. They were educated people. So he would have been educated in that kind of from a very early age. So he was
And it
inspired by those folk.
and it is interesting you say like it just popped into my head, but I wanted to ask you anyway because the amount of different things I've asked people on, and they can never give me any definitive answer. And I know when we were speaking on the phone the other day, we were talking. My question to you was, what, Jesus Christ, they'll talk all day long about all these things like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey or the Egyptian pyramids or,
Mm.
Quetzalcoatl in Mexico and stuff like that. How are we not hearing? And every so often you'll hear, oh, well, there's Newgrange. It's Newgrange. It's very, very old. You're like, "Wait, hold on, but you're very, very old. It's fucking ancient, man.
Ancient, yeah.
It is way like beyond probably our comprehension, really, how possibly old it is and its own technology
Mm.
with the way it can operate with the summer solstice, like, and the winter solstice. You're
I
like,
think, and they can't be. I think someone said it that they still don't know how to build the inside of it because
yep,
it's never leaked in 5,000 years.
yeah, yeah. And
That
I never,
that that alone is just incredible.
and when they start at the 5,000 mark, for me, I'm like, well, where did you get, and they said, well, they carbon dated some of the timbers that they were like, fuck off. Timbers, that timber could have been brought in 5,000 years after the
Yeah.
fucking thing was built. You know what I mean? Like, who knows how.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
now we got deep into it one time. We were talking about, it was on another podcast and it was talking about the pyramids and stuff. We were, well, they're apparently on a huge scale around the earth. And one of the
yeah.
lads we were in Mayo and we were talking about, one of the lads is from Mayo. He said, have you ever looked at Croagh Patrick? I was like,
Mm.
if you can stand back far enough, it is almost perfect in the way of a pyramid. Like, it doesn't stand like a normal
Oh
mountain would.
yeah.
You know what I mean? They were like, well,
Yes.
was this another one of these things? And this is where, I mean, this is probably getting way out of your remit in the sense, like, but how, like, they cap us off at, you know, whatever they have capped us off at, like, what they reckon we're here only 10,000 years. Or how long do you reckon we're here on this island?
I I was talking about this in another stream. No, there is activity up to about 33,000 years ago, but that was more migrationary kind of things because we were all kind of there was it was just different. Apparently it was different where there was land bridges and stuff.
Right, yes.
But I think like in terms of actual settlements, I think it's up to about 12,000 years ago in the north. I know for in the it's either between 10 and 12 up in the north, and then in Kerry, Ferreter's Cove, 6,500 years ago. But you see, that's what they found.
Yeah, this
You
is what I'm
see,
saying.
that's
Like,
what they found. Like, so they haven't, and actually they've found lots of navigation evidence of 6,000 years ago's boats down in that same area.
okay.
So people think like we're just like the same Brendan story sounds ridiculous as in he just went from the islands over to Newfoundland because it was in 500 AD or whatever. But we've been navigating. There's been navigation for thousands and thousands of years before Brendan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like people. I think the mainstream history does kind of, as you say, cuts us off. It kind of puts a limit on what we are like. You
Oh, yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, one minute we're just hunter gatherers, and the next minute we're building Newgrange. And you're like, and they still don't know how they
Yeah,
built
yeah, yeah,
Newgrange.
yeah, yeah,
That's where it
yeah,
just
yeah, 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 yeah.
we get this
It's
glossed
weird.
over thing. And like you talked about them trying to wipe out, trying to finish Irish history for the junior cert that time. Like wait one fucking second.
Yeah,
1 second. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
oh no,
yeah.
eyes forward, eyes forward. Don't be worried about what happened on.
Yeah,
Eyes forward.
yeah,
Don't be
yeah,
worried about
yeah,
what went on
yeah,
over there now. That won't help you one
yeah,
bit. That won't, I
yeah.
mean, surely with the amount of, uh, and this is not to draw you down any conspiracy rabbit holes or anything like that, but surely, I mean, it must bend your brain when you've done this serious digging. You're going, what?
Insane. Oh,
How is
totally.
this not?
Yeah,
How is this not
Yeah.
on every street corner? Like, how is this, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's I think a lot of people are this like a lot of my work is kind of trying to connect people with the ancient stories in a sense that like just connect with them, on a deep level. If it kind of connects with you and you get something from it, that's actually a real win. Because I think what that does, it kind of unlocks this kind of curiosity,
Yeah,
for our ancient history. And then because I think personally, after a lot of research, and I think it doesn't really, you don't really that much research, but it actually is backed up by quite a bit of research, is that there's been a serious campaign for a very long time to destroy the Irish, you know,
yeah,
on,
yeah,
on
yeah.
a real soul, DNA, language, culture, tradition level, like hasn't worked, but there has been a huge um, you know, campaign to do that. And I think that's where we fall as a nation, is that as people, is that it's not our fault. We're victims of it. Like, is that we're carrying that kind of like, don't look, we can't look back because, the colonizers and the masters are watching, like,
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that, yeah, so like we're all fucking messed up about it. Like, we can't, it's only mythology, for fuck's sake. No, but 1 second, like there's lots of people out there study this. This is the oral histories of Ireland. Do you know what that means? It means that it was passed down from generation to generation. And the Christian writers wrote it in their version of it. But before that, it was a history, you
Yes.
know. So people like they just can't compute. It's like, oh no, mythology means lies. No, mythology means it's not true. So what you're saying is what people that logic will lead you to is that so Christianity was basically the beginning of history. So
Yeah.
that's why people are
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's the
yeah,
beginning
yeah,
of
yeah.
history. The Christians wrote it down, and that's when everything started,
Yeah.
you know. But there was this whole huge thousands of years of culture and heritage and all these sites being built, royal sites, not just Newgrange, it's all these other royal
Of
sites.
course. Yeah, yeah,
UNESCO is
yeah.
probably going to add them to their World Heritage list. And it's like, there's all this stuff going on here, you know? So it's like trying to connect us to that in through these stories and through these kind of, these videos or whatever. It's important. And it's actually, I think there is a sleeping giant being kind of woken up,
I
you
think
know?
so. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And people are becoming more suspicious actually in a good way. Like we're talking about now. It's like, the fuck is going on? Like, this
Well,
this is not adding up,
well,
you know?
that's like, and if anybody's even listening to this and going, and sometimes the brain won't make the connection. You'll just listen. You'll just watch or listen to this for entertainment value, or see your videos for entertainment value. But
Mm,
a lot of the time, it's only because I'm a cynical bastard as a comedian. Anyway, you are, and I always go, hold on 1 fucking second now, and it took my brain maybe a 10 year videos or 10, of thinking, going, wait, why don't I know this? Why do I know
mm,
stupid shite? Why do I know stupid shite
mm,
that will never,
mm,
like why don't I know any of this stuff? Like this is far more
mm,
entertaining from a factual point of view. Why don't I know it? And then, as you say, like of course it wasn't the first country to colonize and wipe clear. You know what I mean? The
mm.
Aborigines are, well, by their fingernails are hanging on to their one. You
Exactly.
know what I mean? Like,
Exactly. Like there's one example of just the real disconnect, and this might resonate with some people, but my own hometown, Tralee, which is the Gaelic is called Tralee, the
yeah,
beach of the River Lee, basically. For everybody, pretty much everybody in Tralee, including myself, has this thing in our head that Tralee started with the Anglo-Normans, right? The town started with the Anglo-Normans, were basically from around the 13th century onwards. That's basically Tralee,
yeah,
right? That's not true. The name Tralee actually goes way, way further back. And there was these Gaelic settlements already there. So the Anglo-Normans came along, saw the Gaelic settlements, and of course we put up a fight, but they couldn't handle the Anglo-Normans. The Anglo-Normans just put down their flag, wiped out the kind of hill forts and stuff that was there, and just started their town. But the actual Tralee, not the town, but the Tralee settlement, is far older.
right.
So like that's so like being from Tralee. we're all, our identity is kind of built up. The museum even goes into it, goes back to the Anglo-Norman and it comes forward. And our identity kind of comes from that. But really, our actual town, the settlement itself goes way back.
Way
And there's
before
all
these
these
lads landed on,
weird,
right?
way before them. And there's all these origin stories about Tralee. Like there's even this connection to a Selkie and everything that nobody knows about. But it's actually on Wikipedia. There's a folklore story that nobody knows about. It's connected to a guy that married a Selkie. There's this old folk tale, and
Yes,
that's
yeah,
where the
yeah, yeah,
actual
yeah.
name. Yeah, it's mad stuff. So like my point is that there is this thing in us, like this DNA code, like, and I think that this ancient history is kind of locked in us, but we're kind of up on a superficial level, a conscious level. There's all this identity that's kind of being put into us, like an
Yes.
education level. And we're just kind of like, okay, going around the place, NPC mode, like with this
Yeah.
information, But really, there's something else under us. And I actually think it shows itself, especially in these kind of things where you have the BBC kind of reporter asking Killian Murphy after he wins the Oscar, like, it's like, what is it about the Irish? Like,
Yeah,
why are
yeah.
you all winning these awards all of a sudden? She just woke up yesterday, like, it's like, what is it about the Irish? Because there's Paul Mescal at the moment, there's Barry Keoghan, there's Killian Murphy, there's Saoirse Ronan, there's a huge amount of these young Irish actors, and they're basically cleaning up all around them, like, and then they're all waking up to this Irish thing. What's happening here with
Yeah,
these
yeah.
people, like. And it's like, because we're storytellers, this is who we are. And that like goes all the way back to our oral history of Ireland. That's what we used to do. We used to kind of recite poetry in the courts of the kings and the queens. Like, this is, the File, the Shanachie used to come in and tell the whole history of those people, every night, like, you know what I mean? Or at least a couple of nights a week or whatever. And that's who we are at a DNA level.
Well,
And
you
of
see,
course, Killian Murphy.
you see it when we go abroad, as stand-ups, we go
Hmm,
to the likes of the festivals and stuff like that, and you see other comics going, mother, here come the Irish
that's
lads.
it.
Here come the,
Yes,
and
yes. It's a great point. The comics
be,
as well.
because
Yes,
they
110.
they know what happens if like when it's like say the Free Festival in Edinburgh,
Yeah.
thousands of shows on it during the day. But if people, national people, are just wandering around, go, I'd love to see a couple of shows today. And it's a lot of times it's not even ticketed; it's just pay when you exit the door or whatever, or you can take it. You will find the Irish lads if there's even a mention of it on the post or a mention of it anywhere on the listing.
Mm,
The English lads know, the Scottish lads know. They're like, shit. We're gonna
yeah,
get cleaned
yeah,
out because the
yeah,
Irish lads, because people would just go, oh, well, it's going to be enjoyable because they just have a way. It's in their core, it's in their
yeah.
DNA. Even if they, if they don't have if they're not built up yet enough to have built up enough material, there'll be something we enjoy about it regardless. Because it'll be,
There's a charm and there's a gift of the gab and there's this natural energy. Like, because I watched some of your stuff, Tom, you're excellent as well. Great storyteller. And I love when comics are kind of, it's not based on, the jokes. Like, it's based
yeah,
on the actual context of the story. That's the whole
yeah.
point. I love that kind of comedy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, to my own failing, I probably don't do enough of the relatable. So you know the way when your wife and I just don't have it in me. But people do love seeing that, and they go, "God, it's gas." I know when I'm with my wife, and he's saying, and I just can't do that shit. I'm like, no,
No,
it
I
doesn't make
know
me
you're doing
laugh.
great, man.
It doesn't make
Yeah,
me
yeah,
laugh. So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's funny that you said that about the actors because you see when like there's you'll get a gig based on
yeah,
being Irish almost anywhere in the world because of purely.
yeah.
And I'm like, no, no, but it's not. It is a meritocracy. I've gigged around the world and I've seen the
Mm,
standard, the mean standard. We'll say, sure, the shite, right? No doubt.
mm,
But I've seen the mean standard, and the standard is
mm,
very high here per head capita in the amount in the comics. Like you just see the standard is
mm,
strong. You're like, oh, you know a start,
mm.
beginning, middle, and end. You know the rule of three. And this comes naturally to people who just listen to an owl fella telling them a story one time. You just know it. And I
Yeah.
mean, I've done a great podcast you'll actually like, and they're two good mates. They're funny lads, but it's brilliant the effort they put into it, and you tie into it. They called Monster Fuzz podcast. Um, the lads are based below in Wexford, and they do. I did one with them. I think I do the Selkie. I think I did the Selkie with them, and they pick monsters and from around the world, folklore monsters from around the world, and they'll do a
Mm,
full episode on it. But The lads like,
Class.
oh, you'd love it. But the Selkie one
Mm.
was one. As soon as you said it, I went, Jesus, yes, we did the
It's
Selkie.
not talked about that much, really, the Selkie in Ireland. It's weird. It's kind of it's not that common that, when you
No,
talk about mythology and folklore, like Selkie doesn't come up that often,
but
but it's quite big, like.
I remember on the same one we got off topic, and it was um we just got talking about Irish folklore, and then I said, well, this is perfect. I'm talking to you because the following week, myself and a friend of mine, we do a sporadic podcast called the Tom and Jerry Show, and we pick set subjects. Now the subject could
Mm,
be Bertie Brosnan this week, and we'll do your life story, right? So somebody of
mm,
interest. So we did like Fred Dippin at one time, but we just did random things. We picked Pishokes, a whole
mm,
a whole
mm.
episode of Pishokes, and there's like if you see a whistling woman in the morning, she's whistling to herself, turn around and go home because your day is fucked. Your day is fucked. It's the
Really?
worst. Oh, worst. If she's red haired and whistling, that's it. Stop at home.
Wow, I love that kind of
Yeah, jump
stuff,
back
though.
into bed because it's ruined. And I
Yeah.
asked my mother, I was like, "Gosh, great, great for these kind of things." She was told me about the whistling woman and stuff. She goes, wait, not which where when she moved here first from Kilkenny, there was a great guy, Darby was his name. What a great name, an old guy, and like all day long. This guy he was reciting like what were basically 300-year-old stories, and he was able to run
Wow.
all the way back with these stories, and incredible. He'd have people enthralled. They wouldn't have touched their drink in the
Amazing.
bar, like, because they're just leaning
Yeah.
over. And I remember
Yeah.
meeting him, and I was like, "Oh, so this is all passing through you." That's why comedy here, especially where we live, comedy and even storytelling. Nobody like I noticed gossip doesn't really spin that too well around here because nobody really gives a shit. But if you got a good story, that's
Yeah.
currency. There's no point because
Yes.
nobody gives a shit. What I've noticed, like the old guys people who talk about the weather, it's like, oh fuck, I couldn't be less more bored. But if you have a
Yeah.
story, or if you have something
Mm,
to say of it, hey, do you know what's class? Hey, did you ever and you're like, oh, that's a currency. And it
love it.
buys you something in that moment. You're like, was
Mm,
I telling you about and there must be a
mm,
start, middle, and end. There must be a start, middle,
mm,
and end. So it comes from
mm.
somewhere. Do you know?
We're definitely unique in that sense, I think, anyway. Obviously I don't know huge amounts about like all the cultures in the world. Definitely in the Anglo kind of file countries, you know, Ireland does. We just do stories good. Like I was even thinking about, I met up with a friend earlier on. It was just back and forth, stories, stories, stories,
Yeah,
stories. Like. No, not that other cultures probably do that as well, but there is something about our storytelling
there's some
that is
boring,
quite unique.
there's some boring bastards out there, Bertie.
There is, there definitely is, but some
In
are better than others.
nationality.
Like,
I mean, and
yeah.
I'm dropping a name, but I remember meeting. I was just flabbergasted by meeting, and he was such a nice guy. Was Joe Wicks, the kids kind of fitness guy? To see him, he got huge
Oh
during.
yeah,
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 terribly nice human,
yeah.
but like it was like talking to a goose. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh, oh, there's nothing in there at all, but loveliness.
Really?
Yeah, but he was like, I just love Ireland. You guys just know how to
Oh
love.
yeah, 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 that kind of crack.
And
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I've seen it. I've seen like they have like 2 drink minimums in some bars in countries because they'll sit around all and just look at each other over one drink. Whereas an Irish person could go into a bar by themselves and still make a friend or still talk to
yeah,
somebody or still have a good time. I've seen this in gigging around the world where you'll see like 5 of them sitting around going. That's why comedy does so well in a lot of other countries because
yeah.
these groups of friends go, well, we've got fucking nothing to say to each other, so let's go watch somebody talk professionally.
That's fascinating.
Like it doesn't do
In
as
a
well
yeah,
here as it
yeah,
should stand up. It should be
yeah.
doing better. But people here go, well, I'm fucking interesting too. So, how interesting could that guy be? It's all right. But other
It's a
nationalities
great
revere it.
point. It's a great point, actually. I never thought about that in that way, in terms of like why isn't comedy doing like more popular, you know? Because if you go to random towns in Ireland, like how often is there a comedy show on? Like
Yeah, yeah,
rare,
yeah, yeah. Like
rare, like.
rare.
Yeah, and like in America, I don't know if you watch Kill Tony, but I'm a big fan
Yeah,
of Kill
yeah, yeah,
Tony. Yeah, and you hear like where all the people are coming from America, and they're all doing their comedy in their hometowns. Like even though it might be small, but like they're still doing their comedy, like
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But that's not the case here. Like it's not the
I
case
I
here, I don't
started I
think.
started a comedy club here and went. and it's going, thankfully, because of all the things I've garnered over 15 years of what makes a club a good
Yeah.
club. I mean, moving
Yeah.
the room 15 degrees, like just moving it 15 degrees.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
don't realize, but they're like, oh, I'm enjoying this more. You can see it in people, but things like that.
Mm,
And now it's going really well. But it's a once a month gig. Like it's a small town too. But
mm,
meeting people now who are like, for the first couple of months, had their arms folded, jacket on for the first half, are coming in now
mm,
wearing funky
mm,
shirts, going, "Hey, they're comedy people now," and they're like, "Oh no, I'm
mm,
delighted to hand over the evening's talk to this
mm.
person or these people, and I trust that
Yeah.
you'll do a great job."
Mm,
And these are people that had
mm.
never thought about the spoken word before. They'd never thought about it.
Yeah.
They were just going,
Yeah.
sure, nobody ever told us that there was a spoken word. Do you know? There's what?
Yeah.
Should we not just all just go and
It,
look
it,
at?
it, yeah. In recent years, I've become a massive comedy fan. Like, like I really like I watch a lot of comedy now. Like compared to say like even I used to be a huge film buff, like don't watch as many films. I'm watching a lot of comedy now. I really love the art form. I really I think it's incredible. Like I think comedians have a really huge, like it's almost like, in terms of like say going back even to the courts of the kings and stuff like that, like a comedian or a jester or whatever way you want
Oh
to put it
yeah,
back in
yeah,
those
yeah.
times. I would it's a huge function in society. Comedians, they provide a huge kind of cathartic, just saying the stuff that we all kind of, it's all kind of swimming around in our heads. We don't know quite how to actually say it without being kind of cancelled, like, and comedians provide that for us, like, almost like a movie provides a way to feel, drama, tragedy, comedy. A comedian provides something, a release, like,
Oh yeah,
um, it's amazing. And I think comedy, it said a lot in the Kill Tony, like, get up on the stage. Now, I haven't done it, but to get up on the stage, I have done theater and stuff like that, but to get up on the stage and bomb and to do a bit of comedy,
yeah.
it's just incredibly courageous. And I'm not saying that just to sound like because you're a comedian. I know by being on stage, I know if I went up with a mic and started telling jokes and if nobody was laughing, I know the feeling that I would get from that. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just I can feel
yeah,
it, like,
yeah. Nothing
and
makes
it's
sense
just
about
fair
doing it.
play, like,
Yeah, nothing makes sense about
yeah,
doing. But I mean, I remember talking with Catherine Lynch one time. We were having a real kind of, real deep introspective look at stand up and stuff like that because she'd be more of an
mm,
acting comedian and she was but she was saying we must exist, and this cancel culture was starting to come up at
yeah,
the time, and they were talking about
yeah,
freedom of speech and stuff. And I was, she was saying, she was pushing for why isn't stand up recognized as an art form? Because it's not recognized as an art
mm,
form in Ireland. And I said, well, it's clear
it's
they won't.
bonkers, yeah,
No, they won't.
mm,
They never will. They never will. How could you possibly give me money to go tell jokes where I might fucking rinse the politician that gave me the money? Do you know what I mean? And I have free
there you
speech.
go,
So keep their
mm,
money, but never take our free speech because we are a necessary punch. We must punch up for the general public. Now, that's not giving myself a pat in the back or any of us. We still tell dick jokes, you know what I mean? But for people's
yeah. No,
entertainment.
listen, I hear you, I hear you,
But the day that you cancel stand up is so like ludicrously important, like because again, the gesture in the court is supposed to
totally,
be. It's like you're the
yeah,
verbal ombudsman between the regular folk, and you're not allowed to touch
yeah,
us. You're not allowed to touch us either. We're here to make fun of all of us, including ourselves. Hence why I'm dressed like a fucking
yeah,
idiot, and I will be punching
yeah,
myself and punching up and punching down to make it all to find balance. The ombudsman,
yeah.
the verbal ombudsman between everybody.
Yes,
But
yes. And there's a philosophizing as well, although like can be crude and it can be, simplistic. There is a kind of making sense of things. I don't
yeah,
know if you've ever kind of thought about like
yeah,
it kind of it helps us to kind of, it's almost therapeutic in a way, so because I actually listen to comedians actually like interviewing and things like that. I know Louis C.K. had a huge weird stuff going on with him, but I find him
oh,
fascinating.
he's a
Like
genius.
I
He's a
listened, he's
genius.
a
Like
genius. I listened to
genius.
him, and then this Shane Gillis, they himself and Shane Gillis did a
Yeah,
kind of
another
president's
genius.
podcast, and Shane, and I think Louis knows it, and he's sitting opposite another genius in terms of comedy. But these guys, like their mind, their intellect as well. It's not just their comedy, but their intellect, and there's something about these people, like, you know what I mean? In fact, like, as you know. comedians are great actors as well. So
Ah, yeah,
there
yeah.
is this side to them as well, you know. It's fascinating. And I actually always thought, like, if I'm ever in America, I'd love to sign up for Kill Tony, like, and just go up on the stage. Now I know it's probably not a good thing to do in terms of just going up and taking a real comedian's time, but there is that kind of almost like, you know, having a Muay Thai fight for the sake of being in the ring and just having
Yes,
an
yeah,
actual
yeah, yeah,
fight,
yeah.
like just going up and on the stage and bombing or doing well, like just to do it, like, and experience it, like. I think it's I think there's a liberation to it, you know. And the thing that I find fascinating about comedians and comedy, that bombing is a part of the journey.
Of course
I
it
think
is.
that's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, of course it is. I
It's
mean,
amazing.
you like anything. I mean, I guess like a pro motorbike cyclist, when you come off differently when you know how to come
Mm,
off a bike. Like, there'll be times when I'm
mm,
when I'm building a new show, like I will be very, very soon, and I'm going, some of this could be shit, but it's gotta be said. And you'll often
yeah,
find the audience aren't they're trying to go with you, but you're like, lads, this is fucking dreadful shit, isn't it? And they'll laugh along, going, yeah.
yeah,
So you walk away from it at that point. I mean,
yeah,
if you're going clubbing for somebody who's paying you, it would be remiss of you to go out and die in your hole. If they, here, listen, man,
yeah.
you got to do a good job here. Don't be bringing any of that new shit. Do your new shit in the open mics during the week. You know what I mean? And that's how you go about your
Yes,
business then. Like, but for the first
yes,
3 years at least, you haven't a clue what you're doing. I still don't. I know
yeah,
more now
yeah.
than I did last year, and I guarantee you next year I'll know far more again. Or go, what the
Yes,
fuck was
it's
I
every
thinking?
art form's like that.
What was I thinking?
110.
Like, it was,
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and that's just, but yeah, the first couple of years, you are dying. You're dying every
yeah.
third gig.
And yeah. And how about Tommy Tiernan? Like, because I've always like thought of him as being kind of plucked out of like potentially out of 1,000 years ago as well. He's like, he just seems very deep, like, and you know, he's like, I don't know, something about him that I find is fascinating. You know, he's kind of again going back to the philosophy thing, and I've watched him live as well, and you know, and the fact that he does that interview, the interviewing style that he has on that show that he does. I don't watch it that often now, but I find him like he, he's not just a comedian. There's some he's a traditional storyteller. Like, you know, the
Oh,
way his
he is, yeah.
comedy is unbelievable.
He was given great license to go wandering with his art form back in the day, which you
Yes.
don't nearly get anymore.
No.
Now it's like everything. You want fast food, you want fast this, you need to turn around a TV show now, you need this, this, this. Tiernan blew up early doors from a like he was very, very good comic. I mean, he won the Perrier Award and everything, like, but he was nearly given a license to go off and wander the insides of his head. Whereas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that developed. Do you see it early doors? There was a few comics at the time kind of doing a similar thing. Like Dylan Moran was a bit wafty and stuff like that, but his thing was, I'm drunk, but it was brilliantly done as well. But there was kind of this
Yeah.
wafty kind of early 90s comedian who was like, and they all dressed like Morrissey and stuff. It's like, well, maybe if I think more, and it just developed. And being Irish, of course, helped. Like if he was British and doing that style, nobody would buy it. Nobody would buy. He'd have to be a
Nobody.
character
Yeah.
that people
Yeah.
recognize, like Al Murray's pub landlord. He would have to be that. You know what I mean? He would have to be a character. But because he
Yeah.
was Irish, he kind of looked a bit leprechaun with his fucking waistcoat on. Do you know he's what people
Yeah.
could tolerate? And of course, on top of that, being a brilliantly smart man too. He understood what he
Yeah.
was, what he looked like, how he behaved, and then he could
Yeah.
stretch his legs. Like you watch Tiernan how many times. There's a rule of three. If you're to repeat something 3 times, the third time is the heavy hitter. He'll do
Mm,
something. He might repeat a thing 7 times. And these are just rules, verbal rules. If
mm,
you're given 3 examples, and you thinking I'll give a fourth, chances are you'll crush your own joke because you've gone too
mm.
far. And people's brains are dealt with. He'll do 7, maybe 10 repetitions of a word. And
Mm.
he'd push it so hard and have such confidence because he's done it for so long and been given such
Interesting.
leeway that by the time he hits
Yeah.
number 10, people are back roaring, laughing again. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So he
Yes.
like he broke a lot of boundaries. So it turned him into nearly a kind of a mystical, whimsical
Yeah.
pagan of a character. And he is a character,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? He is a character now, like, where and of course he'd given the
Yeah.
TV show where it's deep and introspective. And of course the producers push hard for the tears too, like, you know what I mean? They do. Like
Yeah,
he's
no, I don't watch it that much, like, but if I get to see clips and stuff, but there's something fascinating because I know we're coming up to, close to time or whatever. But there was one thing that came to mind. We were talking about Tommy. and also I think Dylan Moore and Hector they were from the same.
All around the Navan direction. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm nearly sure they went to the same school or something weird like that, or same college or something. But like the Mead area, and actually there's a lot of actors and writers and especially
Yeah, Pierce
performers actually have
Brosnan, yeah.
come out of the Mead area. There's a load of them after coming out of the performers, loads of them. There's loads of actors. There's Niamh Algar. There's that other guy that does all the Connor something. He does all the mimicry. He's online.
Yes,
There's a
Connor
bunch of them
sketches. Yeah,
from.
he's brilliant. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And then actually to kind of on the same thought process. Now, and the reason why I'm saying this is because going back to like the ancient Ireland and the locations and what there's something, there could be something in the water, the soil or something. Because even in Kerry, there's North Kerry. There's a massive amount of writers that have come out of North Kerry. We mentioned John B. Cain just before we started, like John B. Cain, the playwright. And then there was like John Moriarty, the philosopher. Actually, Tommy Tiernan an RTD program with John Moriarty.
Could I
Yeah,
stop you one second? The dog is
cat.
losing her
Yeah,
mind outside. 1 second.
go
Shh.
away. Yeah, yeah,
One
yeah,
second,
yeah,
1 second. But yeah, sorry. I rudely had to stop there for a second because my dog decided it wanted in on the podcast. But you're right. Even as I was running after the dog, I was like, there is something ingrained in an area that
yeah,
it will permeate through. Like, you know what I mean? It does. Like,
yeah,
great boxers come out of Mexico. It's for a reason. Like,
yeah.
it's
There
not
was
just.
there was this guy, the guy called Pat Moore. There was a priest. He was a lovely, lovely guy. He was friends with John Moriarty. And John O'Donoghue was another writer from North Kerry as well. He wrote all those Celtic books. There's these really wonderful books. They were very popular. But then there's a huge, loads of poets and loads of North Kerry. But Pat Moore had a theory. He said the biggest concentration of holy wells in North Kerry than there is in the whole Ireland, right? Now, we all know that the holy wells were rebranded from the ancient wells,
Yes. Yeah.
of Ireland. Like, so, like there is that aspect as well. It's just that the idea of that alone, like that there's this springing forth of creativity, like in North Kerry, like, and there's all these writers coming from that, and then the idea of like Meath being the center of Ireland, and there's this because it was like a province of itself, and that it's the capital, almost the capital of the ancient Ireland, and that's kind of bringing forward these performers and stuff. And even to this day in Ulster, like the Gaelic football teams, like, that come down there as hard as anything, like, you know what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean? And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's just this thing like about that, and I think that's what the Ireland is. It's like it's all these different areas, and it produces, something similar to what it always has in the past, like, so I like that idea of Ireland kind of, seeding these kind of characters, like, you know what I mean, that are kind of just repeating themselves over the millennia, like,
Yeah, exactly. And they should start popping
yeah,
back up, and maybe, as you said, maybe people are starting to reawaken now the more that they find these stories out and how good they are. It's not that it's stuff has been forced down there. We all had to learn stuff in school. You were like, I couldn't care less about
yeah,
some German lad who is, oh, Jesus.
yeah,
But these are
yeah,
interesting, cool stories from our
yeah,
past. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've,
I think half the reason about school as well is that the teachers, there was never really a kind of like, it's especially with our mythology and our folklore, there was never really a kind of like a real, like, I can't remember it anyway, where there was a real emphasis on these Irish characters, and it was like they were just a part of the curriculum, and it's
yeah,
just like get it over and done with, like, and it's just like, sure, look, and it was never really, I never connected with it at that age, and I should have, because those stories were being told to some extent, some of those mythological stories, like, but it just never connected with me at that age for some reason,
we got. I was very lucky. We got visited by. Oh God, why can't I think of his surname? Amazing man. You know him from our childhood. Long beard.
Oh, is
Fado.
it Eddie
Eddie.
Lenihan?
Eddie Lenihan.
Eddie, yeah, yeah,
Eddie
Eddie's a
came to
great
our
guy.
school
Eddie's,
and it
yeah.
was the man's voice alone. And he's,
Oh,
as
he's amazing.
small kids, you don't know anything about performative art or what. You don't know anything.
Yeah,
And this is just a
yeah,
bearded man sitting there with glasses. Why would he be interested? And I can remember
yeah.
every one of us were glued to his words because he was so digging it. You know what I mean? He was digging it.
But that's an example of like what you need. to kind of have to kind of be inspired by the stories. It's just some sort of storytelling. So when the teachers are doing it, they're just reading it out of the book, like, Fionn with little blah, Fionn this, Fionn that, and you're just at the salmon of knowledge, and it's just like, but when Eddie's telling it,
Oh,
it's a different ball game, you know?
different ball game. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Listen, I've taken up your whole
But
evening. Thank you so, so much for coming
it's
on.
been a pleasure. It's been a
This,
pleasure.
I
Yeah.
honestly, I know now I'll go into the wife and she goes, she'll have a list that I didn't fucking ask you. This is what, so there might be a part two purely sponsored by my wife's
Maybe so.
questions. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no,
you're,
no problem. And look, hit me up anytime, DM if you ever wanted to kind of check up on anything. If I can help you, I would like, you
so,
know.
if you don't, everybody, Bertie Brosnan films, it's very easy. You type in
Yeah,
Bertie Brosnan, you will not find another one. Like, but
yeah, that's
you have
true.
your own
Yeah, yeah.
podcast as well. And what's the title of it?
So actually, so no, I have a Patreon, and
Ah, yes.
I do exclusive podcasts on my Patreon. But but look, in terms of actually checking out the stories that I've mentioned tonight, Bertie Brosnan on YouTube,
Yes.
at Bertie Brosnan, and you'll get everything on there. I do have a free version of my Patreon. It's at Bertie Brosnan Films as well. But I definitely recommend people to sign up. It's €4 a month plus tax, like, and you get like, there's a huge amount of stuff, and I'm going to be adding a huge amount in the next couple month or two as well, with my big tour of Ireland and all the Brian Boru sites. So yeah, yeah,
Brilliant. Brilliant stuff. The hope it
yeah.
too, I mean, we're going to see a novella or a play or something. We're going to see something Brian related anyway, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah, Brian Brew novella. It's adapted from. We didn't talk about the film project, but
I
anyway,
know,
sure. Well,
yeah.
look, it is what it is. Yeah, the film project that was meant to happen, there was investment involved, but then it didn't happen. So we're not making the project at the moment. So I said, look, I built everybody up with this excitement because it was happening. So then I said, you know what, I need to do something. With the 10/10 anniversary of Brian Boru, the Battle of Clontarf coming up. I won't have the novella ready by then, but it will be soon afterwards. I'm releasing a documentary called Battle for Ireland on my YouTube a week before the 23rd of April on my YouTube, which is
Brilliant.
about the Battle of Clontarf, the culmination. I believe it was a war for Ireland, probably is probably a better way of titling it. Um, so yeah, the novella will come out, but I'll just update. Like if you sign up to my mailing list, join my Patreon, just follow me on social media, you're gonna see all the updates about the novella and when it's gonna come out. Um, yeah,
Bertie, it's been an absolute treat. Thank you so much for coming on.
no problem. Thank you so much.